Hey there, Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen here, leading the movement, bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training. And before I get started, please like, definitely subscribe, and share these videos with those in your arena for whom it might make a difference in their fitness training programs or their adapted PE programs for the autism and neurodivergent population. In this edition, we're going to be talking about advanced exercise implementation. And when I say advanced, there's an asterisk there because advanced is going to be different for each athlete. As we know, with our autism population, there is a wide spectrum of capabilities, physical, adaptive, and cognitive. And so we want to take this into consideration. Now, one of the things is that many of our ASD life skill athletes are going to exhibit deficits in strength and motor planning. So when we start out our programs, we oftentimes are going to have a modified variation of our foundational exercises. What are the foundational exercises? Simply meaning our squat, push, pull, carry, hinge. All right, now, here is the thing. There are two exercises that I consider foundational in our programming because they have direct generalization or carryover to activities of daily living. One of those is going to be the push-up, and the other is going to be the deadlift or hinge pattern. Now, both of these I have found in my over 20 years of experience are particularly difficult for our population, so much so that in the first few years, I didn't even program them for a lot of my athletes. Now, this being, again, a wide spectrum, if you have an athlete who is already strong and capable enough to do a push-up or to do a deadlift or even a variation of a deadlift, then do it. Makes total sense. It's not as though we have to wait a specific time, but we have to wait for specific skills to emerge, and those are what we call our prerequisites. I'll give you a couple of examples that we use in autism fitness programming, and I'll start with the push-up and then we'll talk about the deadlift. The push-up I consider a foundational exercise, not only as an upper body pushing exercise, but also for safety over time. As we age, one of the biggest safety concerns is falling. And I don't know about you, but certainly in my family, we've dealt with older individuals having falls, and all of a sudden this becomes a significant factor in not only their quality of life, but extending out to other family members who needs to take care, who needs to be on alert. Why am I talking about this with respect to a push-up? Well, if we are strong enough to push ourselves up off of the floor, whether or not we've fallen, even looking for something under a bed and then being able to stand back up, this is a significant factor in quality of life as we age. We want to develop and maintain these strength skills. We use the push-up as almost a preventative health measure here because it's going to develop that upper body strength, that trunk stability, and that movement pattern of being able to get up off of the floor. Now, here's the issue. For many of our autism and neurodivergent athletes, they are not going to be able to do a full horizontal push-up from the floor, both from a motor planning perspective, but that strength is just not going to be there just yet in the chest, in the shoulders, in the triceps. What do we do about that? Well, fortunately in autism fitness programming, and it's not like we invented the modified push-up, but it's the way in which we implement it. We use a modified variation of a push-up. We have the athlete set up with their hands on a bench or on a box on a stable, I repeat, stable surface, so that they are able to perform the push-up at an angle. What it's doing is taking at least half of the body weight out of the equation, so they're no longer doing the push-up with their lower body, and their trunk is able to stabilize just using their upper body weight. Now, every once in a while, we'll have an athlete who is able to progress relatively quickly to utilizing their full body, even on an incline. There are several different variations going from modification to standard to a progressed variation of the push-ups. We'll have our athletes start with their knees on the ground, and depending on the length of their torso, they'll be at a particular angle where they can bring their chest all the way down to that box or bench and then push up. So what we're doing is we're maintaining that neutral spine. We're not getting that spinal extension from the athlete where they're bowing up, kind of that cobra position. We want still as good and safe and effective as a movement as possible. We need to set up that modification so that it works for that particular athlete. This is something we spend a lot of time on in the Autism Fitness Pro curriculum. From there, we can adjust and further modify, or we can progress that push-up depending on how stable and how good a range of motion that athlete has as they are pushing themselves up and then controlling themselves on the way down for that push-up. I get asked a lot about wall push-ups. I do not like wall push-ups because there is not enough gravity or resistance against the athlete, so you can just push yourself off of a wall and kind of allow yourself to float a little bit. There's too much time during that wall push-up where there's no actual control being exerted because you're not at the expense of gravity, or there's not enough gravity that you need to stabilize, really. I also don't like the angle for the wall push-up. I think we do a lot better going off on an inclined surface and having the knees down. I think that's a big differentiation from starting out with the wall push-up. Starting the athlete just at a higher angle and with their knees on the floor. In the beginning, they don't even need to bring their knees up off the floor. I like to start my athletes out pushing up and then bring the knees up off the floor, just so they get the sense of, or get used to bringing their full body up into position. All right, let's go on to the hinge, because the hinge is actually the more challenging of the two. The deadlift is essentially teaching how to pick heavy things up off the floor. And if you don't think that that's an important life skill, well, I want you to pause and think about all of the times you have to grab a box off the floor, or grab a heavy bag of laundry or garbage or something else off of the floor. And we need to learn how to do this safely and effectively. What is the big challenge here? The big challenge here is that so many of our autism and neurodivergent athletes, when they do this, will start flexing their spine or going into that C curvature. Now, that is not dangerous if someone is picking up a light object off of the floor. And one of the things that's changed and that we've learned through quantitative study and research in the realm of exercise science is that flexion of the spine when you're picking something up off the floor is not as dangerous as we used to think it is, but that's also relative to how heavy the object is for that individual. Typically, if you or I are picking something 5 pounds off the floor, it's not going to be a big deal. But when we get into that 25, 30, 40 pounds, then it's not that it's necessarily dangerous, but we do have to be a little more cognizant of our form and technique. That's what the hinge teaches. However, because so many of our autism and neurodivergent athletes have difficulty maintaining that neutral spine, and because it's so abstract and almost, I would say, just about completely impossible to explain to somebody, we have to learn through demonstrations. In autism fitness programming, we have two different ways that we introduce the hinge when it is time. I will tell you that for most of the athletes that I've worked with over the past 24 years, I hold off on the hinge until I know that this athlete is ready, or when I say I know, until I am convinced that this athlete is ready to at least try the hinge movement. The first thing that we use is actually a power exercise. That is our scoop throw. The scoop throw teaches the hinge position to the athlete. Does it have a direct one-to-one carryover from the scoop throw position to the deadlift? Absolutely not, but it's a start to teach that hinge position. The second thing that we do to introduce the hinge pattern or the deadlift is a lot more dedicated to the deadlift itself. It's having the athlete do the deadlift off of a platform, so an elevated surface, so that we are not inviting further spinal flexion, so that the athlete is not bending over and doing that C-curve thing with their spine when they are picking up. We typically use a kettlebell for this because the handle is higher, the weight is more concentrated or centralized than it would be with a barbell, for example. A barbell is a phenomenal tool for the deadlift, but for many of our athletes, it is going to be too much of a challenge too soon. I like using a kettlebell on an elevated surface. You can use a low box, you can use a couple of bumper plates that are stacked up, and then guiding the athlete through the position. This is a big challenge, probably the biggest challenge of teaching any exercise, not just in the autism fitness realm, but in general, outside of some of the Olympic lifts. When we are doing this, we want to proceed with caution and make a concerted effort to give the athlete an even easier variation than they might be ready for, because in order to teach the exercise properly, we need to have the technique down. There is no way around it. With the push-up, we can modify a lot more with the push-up than we can with the deadlift, because the initial starting position for the deadlift requires that the athlete has that neutral spine. So that's a big deal when you're considering whether or not to add in the deadlift just yet, or whether to add in the push-up just yet. Even though we consider these foundational exercises, there are some prerequisite skills that we need to look for, and this is something that you get in the Autism Fitness Pro Certification. Oh, the Pro Certification, of course, if you're ready to become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro anywhere in the world, you can head on over to autismfitness.com. You can download the course syllabus so you know exactly what you're getting, and then you can register, start your coursework immediately, and join us for your full day, hands-on, feet-on, brains-on practical, either in person or virtually from anywhere in the world. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I'd love to know your questions about more, well, I'll put them in air quotes, but advanced variations of an exercise, how you modify them. If you have any questions about other exercises, and of course, whether this information has been pertinent to serving your athletes even better, because our goal in the Movement for Movement is to get high quality fitness programming involved in the lives of every neurodivergent individual on the planet. And of course, that starts with Autism Fitness, and then it goes to you as an Autism Fitness Certified Pro. I'd love to know what you think. I'd love to know if you have questions about this, or if you have a topic that you'd like me to cover in a future edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday Training. And by the way, thank you very much for watching as this channel grows. Please subscribe so you never miss another premiere. And of course, I want to know your questions. I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the Movement for Movement. Thank you very much for watching.